Hi everyone, it's Jennifer.
And Yabo.
And we're back with President Pilgrimage this time to give our political segment of the week. And this time we want to focus on Kavanaugh and the hearings for the Supreme Court and the protests going on all around that in different ways. The Congress and Senate hearings and interviews and acts of resistance there, treatment of men and women who are being interviewed by congressional members and how there's kind of a double standard. So the minute that Trump announced Kavanaugh would be his nominee, protesters started. I think it hits women particularly hard because of his stance on abortion and women's rights. And there being emails that were released and unearthed about how he sees Roe versus Wade as not settled law, quote. And also his issue on racial profiling, which was kind of sensitive for me or touched me because I lived in New York during 9/11 and my ex-husband being an Arab Muslim, we definitely were stopped a lot, and there was a certain policy in place there around, I mean, you could call it racial profiling. And, you know, again, some people could say that it's a way to, you know, protect and defend, and especially in that time, you know, I respect police officers' duty to ensure safety and to try to get to the, you know, the bottom of basically what was happening and, you know, really just address it. But Kavanaugh's position is that after 9/11, that, you know, profiling or stopping should be, quote, race neutral, but until there's a proper policy in place, that it's basically was kind of okay, that there wasn't anything really satisfactory in place at the moment. So for the time being, racial profiling was the most effective way to enforce the law and whatever, you know, that was about. But so Roe versus Wade being in question, I went to DC and marched when I was at Brown. So gosh, that was probably when was the march there for what now, women's rights, and I think, oh God, how was it being questioned then too? So anyway, there were probably a million women there. It was a lot of women. I went down there. It was a very empowering time and kind of reinforcing that is just not an option, mm-hmm. and that women have a say and a right to determine what to do with their own bodies. But as Yabo and I were talking about, kind of how men want to control and police women's bodies and claim ownership, particularly around certain parts of the bodies, including the uterus. So I loved Kamala Harris's questioning of him of, you know, why aren't there any laws around the kind of regulation of male bodies and mm-hmm. any parts of male bodies, mm-hmm. and birth control around mm-hmm. male bodies, because he basically was saying birth control was like abortion. He was equating birth control to abortion, which is, to me, is just astoundingly ignorant.
Let me push back on you for that for a minute, only because I know that's a stance the Catholic Church has had. And so when you have stances like that, like, I personally think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But I've learned that it's important to interrogate why that person believes that, right? But the way contraception overwhelmingly and disproportionately falls on women, and now we're being policed for our ability to reproduce and be productive, right? So be productive meaning in our work, women are paid less. Reproduce meaning the value of our body is in our uterus. Oh my gosh,
I just made the connection of the desire for white men to continue to have white babies.
Yes.
To counteract the growing, you know,
population disruption.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. Like, boop, light bulb.
Right. So these things, they sound so ridiculous to some of us. And the problem I have with it is, for too long, I have had knee-jerk reactions. And the knee-jerk reactions has not convinced anybody to think differently or do anything differently. And I want to be able to hold on to these perspectives that I have and try and listen and hear what's at the basis of what you're saying, and try and speak to you from more empathy for what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, I think men are very threatened by women. I think about in Liberia, and when there was civil war, and Lima Bowie gets all the women to shut down sex.
Yeah.
That is how the civil war in a country stopped, because this woman who was in charge of the market women ran a campaign with the women just saying no sex, no sex.
Yeah.
Until you men stop fighting, no sex. That is the power of women.
Yeah.
And so we are seeing this power shift in this country with the numbers of women that are running for office right now, right? So I'm thinking, and make sure we come back to Kavanaugh, I'm thinking about this week I listened to an old podcast on The Daily, the New York Times podcast, and they played an audio of when Anita Hill was being interrogated in the same Senate kind of hearing about Clarence Thomas.
And harassment.
And how he harassed her. Yeah. She was one of the first. And I remember, I don't even remember what year it was. I think it was in the 80s, and I think I was in law school.
Yeah.
But the way I felt back then, as I listened to this audio clip, I was transported right back to then, when I said to myself, I will never, ever allow myself to be in this position where men, white men, are sitting around in the most imposing legislative piece of architecture probably in the world, interrogating her about, if he sexually harassed you, then why did you stay in touch with him after he left? What did he say about the piece of the strand of pubic hair on the Coke can? When did he say this? What was his... And I was like, why should she be interrogated about this? It was so demeaning. And the way women are relegated to a much lesser power posture, even the framework of questions, was so demeaning and dehumanizing. Mad respect to Anita Hill back then, who cracked this glass in Congress by sitting there and taking this bull crap, right? Big kudos to Monica Lewinsky, who was a baby when I think, at my age, thinking of her, sitting there talking about her blue dress and her crush on the president and what happened or what didn't happen. First of all, I have real big issues with you bringing Monica Lewinsky up there to parade her own sexuality, what should be a very private thing. Whereas Anita Hill said, no, I'm going to tell you about this man, right? Yeah. So that's different. She signed up for it. Monica Lewinsky didn't. But women continue to only be seen for the fact that we have a womb. That is where our value lies to most men. And whether it's sex, that's why men want sex with younger women, because the value of a woman's body is sexuality and child production. End of story.
And it makes them feel younger when they're with someone younger, whereas they don't have to feel like they're getting older and that death is imminent when they're with someone more their age.
Like, I think I remember in the Bible, I got so mad. So David was old. Yeah. And they bring Abigail or Abishag to come and warm the old man. I'm like, that's being perverted. Yeah. But anyway, I think I made a statement. I want to go back and correct this. I said that's why men like younger women. Not all men. That was a blanket statement. I shouldn't have said that. Some men. Often it feels disproportionately like most men. But let's not use blanket statements. It doesn't honor those that don't. Right? So I apologize for that. That's how we do this. We're learning, we're growing. We catch ourselves. We gain awareness. Back to Kavanaugh. I don't like him. I don't like overly conservative judges because they feel very closed off to me. I don't like when. And what I like about liberal judges is you'll find in their dissents over the years, there's a lot more growing room, where they may not have seen something once before, now they can see it. Whereas a lot of times with extreme conservative judges, they just stay on the same point the whole entire time.
Ideological.
It's ideological, and they believe in that this is the most right thing.
Yeah.
And they don't believe in interpretation. And the law, the finesse of the law, the art of the law is about interpretation.
It is, yeah.
And so with very conservative judges, what I've learned, having studied law, having gone to law school, I'm not speaking out of a vacuum, is that a lot of times they're locked into a preconceived notion of ideology that they will carry throughout their experiences and their writings and their legal impact, the legal impact of their opinions and their votes. So that's why he's not my guy. The other thing that kind of pisses me off about this, now this really ticks me off. They didn't let Obama's confirmation go through, and now you want everybody to let this guy go through?
Yeah.
You cheated Obama of a Supreme Court nomination.
Yeah.
You cheated him. You cheated him. You know, and that's just so unfair, right? To me, that's totally unfair. But anyway, I don't like this process of how, you know, I don't know. I just don't like the bullying tactics that we see going on right now.
Very
and I
much.
feel like slamming who
culture.
we want through and all that kind of stuff is just cheap. It's low rent. I was so proud of Kamala Harris and how she interrogated Kavanaugh, and that's a bad litigator. She's an amazing. She's very talented at what she does.
Yeah.
And I like how cool, calm, and collected she stays
She is,
in those processes.
And Cory Booker, kudos to him for his active resistance, as we're talking about active resistance. And regardless of whether or not those emails were classified, he made that decision and he made it public, and he was going to, you know, let the public know what he felt they should know, and that it was not okay for those to be classified.
I don't know how I feel about that, because did he do that unintentionally, or did he not realize they were already public documents? Was he just taking advantage or trying to look good? I don't know. That's what some people are saying. I honestly don't know. But I do like that he tends to be a stand-up guy. It's consistent with him saying, I don't care what I put on the line. Kind of like the Colin Kaepernick thing. Stand for something.
And, we benefited from it.
Yeah, he does have that persona, though. Cory Booker does. But I know some people were like really low entry point, right? But I like Cory Booker, and I think he stands for some solid principles. I just want Stacey Abrams to win. I want to see good, solid women first, then men who are willing to go into whatever office they're running for, win, represent the masses, not the top 1%. Honestly, as much as I'm a Democrat, bleeding heart, I want Democrats to win across the board. I know there's some moderate conservatives, Republicans that are running. I wish them well. I hope that they have this desire to work together. Mm-hmm. If you have that, bring it. I don't think we only need to have liberal values. I think it's when liberals and conservatives hash things out. A lot of times we get a lot of benefits, but the way it's being ramrodded right now, no, it's not healthy.
Well,
it's not healthy.
You know, I've always had a little bit of an issue with just a two-party system. I feel like it's very binary and you have to be one or the other, whereas why, you know, and there's lots of arguments about more than one just kind of dilutes the...
Yeah.
So I get that, but I just don't like feeling like you have to be put in a box of one
Either
or the other, and you have to identify with all those values associated with each party.
Right.
And that's where I think people get disillusioned with voting in general, with politics. And I went canvassing a few weeks ago, and it's a great way to really talk to people and get to know what their feelings are. And when you just ask the question of like, what issues are important to you? Some people are like, I'm just, I'm so disillusioned. I don't really care. And that is, I think, the problem of our political system and the people who are running. And that they're not connected, that they're out of touch, so they don't feel inspired or empowered or responsible to engage civically. And granted, Americans, we were kind of spoiled. Like, we feel like we can just coast, whereas it really is our duty. And it's something that, in my class I'm telling, there is some part of one assignment is for them to show some kind of civic engagement, because you can't just sit by and let all this go by us. It's a privilege and a right to have a vote. And so many places around the world do not have that privilege. And if you don't vote, you can't complain. You cannot, sit back and be like, oh, I wish this was different, this was different. So, on the other hand of that, if you do vote, you have a right. You have a right to talk about it. You have a right to have a feeling. If you don't vote, you're not going to, it's just basically saying, like, here's my, I don't know, here's my whatever. Like, go ahead and take it. Take my agency away from me, because I'm just too, like, I just don't care enough.
Yeah.
Indifference, which, at this point in time, we need to care.
But let me tell you something. You make me think of something. So a family friend went to live in Switzerland for some time a few years back, and on a phone call, I was like, well, how do you like it there? And when they came back, I was like, well, visited. How do you like it there? What was it like? Because, like, I just think of Switzerland and the sounds of music and just beauty, the chocolate, the just precision, like Swiss Army knives, Swiss watches, beautiful precision. Like, in all of Europe, that was probably the most fascinating country to me. And she said, they're so passive. They're not even involved in anything about government, even on the news. And this was quite a few years ago. She was like, even on the news, you don't hear anything about government. It's because the government is so efficient and working, people are not engaged. She said, I miss the American engagement. And so I love sharing perspectives like that, because that is what made America great, right? That my vote and your vote matters, and our audience's vote matters. You matter. Every single vote matters. Yeah.
Well, actually, I would compare, American engagement to Nigeria. And what I appreciate about Nigeria was I felt like everybody spoke their opinion, regardless of whether, and the press at that time was more free. This was in 2006, so it was during Bush, and it was like a lot of kind of similar to what's going on today, more of a crackdown on like free speech. And, even though unfortunately a lot of times the electoral system there, was having, people weren't having their votes counted, but there was an expression and a knowledge, which I think is growing right now, about what was going on in the country. Everyone had some kind of opinion and reaction. But Americans, I think this is kind of a wake-up call. They can get pretty lackadaisical and just and I mean, my daughter's classmates, sad, but they kind of know about politics. All they know is like what they see in social media and these kind of sound bites of different people, and they see them more as characters. They don't see them as what their job entails. Right. And that's dangerous, because they don't realize what these people are actually doing. They just learn about Trump and like everything he's kind of spewing out. They don't understand the effects of what he's doing in his job.
That's that Hollywood effect where everything is a cartoon character.
Yeah.
And it's a persona. It's not a connection to an impact of something. But I just encourage our listeners to A, vote. B, educate yourself, even if it's only on one thing. In Georgia, we have a Republican candidate who is trying to close down voting locations in a particular county.
Wipe out voter
How can you vote? What was it? 19 places he was going to shut down in a particular state, and there'd only be 2 that are open in a state that has no public, in a county that has no public transportation. Like, that is how systematized the voter suppression is, where you have the power of the office to make that happen. Granted, it was shut down, right? Vote, educate yourself on the issues. And I'm going to tell you something controversial. If you like, talk back to me. Here's the controversial thing I want to tell you. Don't listen to one news station. Don't just listen to Fox. Don't just listen to CNN. Take the same story, go on CNN, go on MSNBC, write down how MSNBC, CNN, and Fox are handling the same story, and begin to do your own research. You will see the slant of the media. So that's how you know who you want to trust, right?
And long-term established journalistic sites like NPR,
yes,
LA Times, New York Times,
yep.
Atlantic, those are generally also good places to kind of...
And CNN used to be pretty good, right? And now they're supposedly too liberal. I like CNN.
I just don't think they really do really in-depth journalistic reporting.
Okay. CNN, I'm sorry, NPR has been my long-term favorite. Also, I am an avid reader of the New York Times. You can get a subscription from your public library if you're here in Georgia, so please get one. Listen, read, inform yourself, figure out the issues. The other day, I went to the city council meeting at City of Clarkston. Mm-hmm. I've lived in America 37 years. That was my first time going to a city council meeting, and it was interesting. It was really interesting. All kinds of issues came up that I wasn't aware of. I went just to say I went. I didn't go thinking I would learn something new. And I learned some new stuff, So let's not be passive. This is our right. This is our space. We have the right to say what we want.
And demand proper, accountability from our representatives and proper representation of the issues that we want to deal with and our concerns and, all that.
It's important your vote counts. So we've given you a lot of food for thought. I am very interested in hearing back from each and every one of you listeners. So there are two things I'd like you to do. Please share this podcast with somebody else. Tell them about it. Promote it, and email us at presentpilgrimage@gmail.com and tell us what you think. Tell us where you agree. Tell us things you'd like us to talk about.
Or go on our Facebook page. You can comment there.
Yes, facebook.com/presentpilgrimage. Yeah. We appreciate you listening. Big hugs to you. Peace to you and yours. There's hope in all that we do. Bye-bye.
Bye.